All right, once again, you have entered the SciCast.
It's been a long time. Cheers. Welcome back.
Cheers. As you can see, I got Ben back on with me, and I'm again, Dr. J. Today, the fascinating topic of
sacred geometry. Not a topic that maybe a lot of people are familiar with, may have heard it.
Yeah,
probably the closest thing that most people may have heard of it would be probably in any of Dan Brown's novels.
which are quite good.
I believe he made, I haven't read his latest one, Inferno, but I know, especially in Angels and Demons and the Da Vinci Code, there was actually a fair amount of references to it in there.
We should probably talk about what exactly.
Yeah, so that's, but that may be where a lot of people have heard from it, don't
Sure,
know much
okay.
more about. You're right.
All right, so sacred geometry, which pertains to the geometry of nature in a way, that it's somehow not random and actually has order.
Yeah, definitely, like order and pattern to it, and the term sacred comes from, they believe they've dated back, I mean, almost to a religious aspect.
Sure. Dating back to old churches and synagogues.
Yeah, and actually one thing that I found out, I mean, it almost, it's a reference or almost a building block that, God used to create everything, as far as where some people come from, and I think that's where the base, because you start the basis of where it comes from, they first start talking about the void.
Mm-hmm.
And where it is, and you start talking about so the void would be endless, you had to start somewhere, so you needed boundaries or patterns.
It's like little Lego bricks.
Yeah, in a sense, and so where the geometry starts coming in is definitely where, even in your first level high school classes, they would be talking about your three axes. So you would have left to right, front to back, and then up and down.
3 dimensions.
So there's where your three dimensions, your X, Y, and Z axis. And then they say to where you started to come in, if you connected all of those points, of those 6 points, and that's where you came up with your first 3-dimensional figure.
Right.
And then that's where you started building it, or where God started building was inside of that space to create everything.
Yeah. A good way to, if we start saying, like, maybe you could look at it like the beehive. This is the pattern of a beehive in the honeycomb, all hexagon. It's all, you're saying, now do these bees use a ruler? Because these things are perfectly shaped.
Yeah, how they all fit together. I mean, actually, that's a great example of where other things you'll see in nature. And that's where kind of a lot of it, they relate a lot of it, to the nature, where you find things in nature. If you look inside, like the top of a flower, how everything is symmetrical coming out of the flower and right in the middle. Snowflakes, all unique in their own sense, but
if you look closely.
Yeah, if you were to actually be able to put them under a microscope, all of the geometric shapes in there are perfectly aligned.
Just naturally, it's.
Seashells are another one where I don't have the correct name, but
the nautilus or something like that.
Something that, but the ones that spiral out, or even even like a scallop or a clamshell, everything is proportionate to a certain point. Yeah, it's quite amazing, and that's where a lot of the ancient. And actually, your most famous of a lot of the tetrahedrons, or what they refer to, would be your pyramids, ancient Egypt.
Tetrahedron, one of my new favorite words.
So yeah, you say tetrahedron, you're like, duh, the pyramids. If somebody doesn't know.
Which pyramid? Pyramids on the Giza Plateau or on South America? Both.
True. Very true. Yeah.
Because, was it the one in Chichen Itza? Has the same diameter base, but it's not as tall as the Pyramid of Giza, which is fascinating. It's in the middle of the jungle.
Right. So they're wondering. Yeah, that's right. That was that one. The dimensions were so. They're like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Continents apart.
Right.
And and
we could have probably a podcast on that, maybe because with that whole idea, we would assume that they would have no way of contact between each other because there's a huge ocean between them.
Right.
What happens if they had trade?
Mm-hmm.
As in, be it sea or air.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. This comes. Well, and this gets into a whole other point of all of it. Well,
we could
we're
go
starting
deep
to.
in this hole.
Oh yeah, we could go very deep in this hole real fast. It gets deep into a lot of the mysteries of ancient Egypt, like what was there and how did it become there? Where did they come up with this stuff?
Why did they make it? How did
Yeah. How did they make it in there? Which, and actually one of the symbols they talk about in some of the sacred geometry they found, I believe I'd have to look here at my note, they call it the flower of life, which is, it's kind of the basis for, it's basically connecting a bunch of the circles together.
Sure.
You start there and I don't have a great picture we can show at this time. We might be able to add it.
I don't think that one.
No, I don't think, no, that's not on those. We may be able to edit that
Yeah.
in later there. But it's a picture. It's basically if you take a bunch of circles, or when you were a kid, if you had the, what was that called, the stenograph?
That sounds
Or
right.
something, you put your pencil in and you rotated the circle around the circle,
Yeah.
and it basically created a lot of these images, but you kind of get the same effect if you would connect circles together, and you have to find the center points on it.
Right.
And you put that there. Well, anyway, they found the symbol on the Temple of Osiris in ancient Egypt, etched in granite, which was, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, approximately. Wondering how in the heck they could even etch it in granite to start with, and they still find that symbol, kind of all over. And this is,
That would kind of mean that when you're etching something in granite, it means something.
Yeah, there's definitely significant meaning to it. And to have that symbol perfectly etched, and then to perfectly etch it on top of that, with today's technology, it can be done, with lasers and, pinpoint stuff. Ancient Egypt, they had a hammer and a chisel.
As far as we know, because
as far as that's a subject
the idea,
for another debate.
Yeah, because the idea that based on our timeline of history,
Mm-hmm.
that they were in that would be the Stone Age, I think, or is it the Copper Age? Maybe. Either way,
perhaps I don't know for sure.
Either way, they speculate that they did this miraculous building, which is so precisely done with their
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of thousands of tons of rock.
Mm-hmm.
They used it with a hammer and a chisel.
Yeah, and it's this was their unit of measurement. This is what you're talking. They measured by hands. Well, okay, my hand is different than his size hand versus somebody else's. Where's the consistency?
Well, the foot. Where did the foot come from? 2 feet, 3 feet.
Yeah, the foot. As far as that, you hold that up and
Probably the Pharaoh's foot. This shall be a foot.
yeah, that's where they determined it from. And so, and that's where you go in. Just the start of seeing these symbols all over. All of a sudden, people started noticing patterns of this all over the world. And it's like you said, it's not. Is it divine? Was it designed, or is it actually? If you kind of go back to talking about mathematics being, the universal language. Look how perfectly just random things fit together. A beehive, for instance. How the heck do they do that? They're bees. No offense against a bee, but.
Well, I guess you could. Here's just extrapolating here in my head, because a beehive is literally a hive mind per se, right? It seems like everybody's moving in unison. We got the queen, so basically, she's the computer head, the head guy.
Right.
She's just, she's like, here's my design, and she's like, okay, and then just filters down. That's how it turns out, somehow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can see that, but then, you have species, we'll say, of bees that have never come in contact with each other, but it's the same thing.
Right. No matter what beehive, they all have the same shape. They're not like as you're referring to, they're not talking to each other.
Right.
If you separate them two for their entire lifespan, they'll still make the same shape.
Right.
It's inherent in their DNA to make that shape.
Yeah, inherent in DNA. Which goes back to one of our very first podcasts. Is all just simulation theory? This is all just
Mm-hmm.
It's all in our minds. Which would
just
be
a bunch of chemicals flowing together.
flowing together. We're batteries for a computer.
Turn a human being into this.
Right. So yeah, but a lot of it is just the symmetry with everything they go there. I mean, and you can find it look in the mirror and you'll see it in your eyes.
Yeah, the cornea and all that.
Mm-hmm. Cornea, the iris, and all of that. I mean, it's everything. It's you just see the symmetry and everything flowing, which they're unique and the same, and all at the same time.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Well, even the way your fingerprints come about and everything. It's very interesting where they come out, and so many people have done research into that. I mean, we started looking things up a little bit, and I mean, I even ran across a website there. It's SacredGeoSciCast. They're selling T-shirts. T-shirts and jewelry and other things of just its shapes and symbols.
Well, they gotta make some money too. They gotta run the service on that website.
But it's the fact that everything kind of correlates. So we talked about the spheres coming, or the circles coming together.
Right.
Well, if you take those circles and turn them into a sphere would be your three-dimensional circle. All of these other shapes, all sides proportionally being the same, so your tetrahedron, all equal sides and everything, built it the same way, you could put that inside a sphere, and each point would touch each other point, along the sphere, and balance inside there equally. So, it's all back to the symmetry. You three-dimensionalize a triangle, a square, what were the other ones? A hexagon, an octagon. I can't remember.
Every shape should work.
Almost every shape should work. I can't remember, but it was one graph, I wish I actually would have printed it. They put the circles around the outside, and it was the only it was almost like prime shapes. Kind of a prime number. And you went around the circle, and it was, I wish I had that. It was like 8 shapes. But it's very funny, but the very top circle that was left empty, which they go back to talking to, was considered the void again.
Okay.
That was left empty, but you went around, it was like a tetrahedron, whatever I call it a cube. They have I can't remember the technical name. But then you have the hexahedron, the octahedron, the pentahedron, all there, and if you would put those inside a sphere the same, all points would touch and it would balance inside there perfectly.
The perfect shape.
Yeah. And I think they go back to why the pyramids were done the way they were, because you could, if you were to take your pyramid shape, inside that you could balance another pyramid perfectly if you put it upside down. Obviously scaled down to the size. It was actually, and you can infinitely go smaller down to your molecules and atom size. But they had one that was flipped upside down, and it would balance around the 3 sides, and then the point would hit the bottom, and then you could flip another one inside that.
Almost too perfect.
Right, exactly. Which like you said, goes back to the fascination with how the ancient Egyptians did that.
Yeah.
Which I love that Ancient Aliens.
Great show.
I haven't watched very much of it, but yeah, it's fascinating. You know, how did they do that? I still love the one thing, like what was the one we were watching? They talked about how long it would take to build the one pyramid. Even with today's technology, they said it would.
Yeah, they went really specific though about how much time it would take to quarry that size block.
Right.
How many blocks are in a pyramid? They would say if you could do this, if you could, take out this block and move it to here, in an 8-hour period per day, it would take so many years.
Yeah, and I can't remember what was it. And they said like with today's technology, it would take like what, 10 years or something?
At least
10 to 20 years to do.
And that's constant. 2,000 bricks a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, 24 hours a day. I mean, there's no stop. I mean, everything keeps moving smoothly. And, the talk that they did this with some camels, horses, and some rope and logs.
Although, have you heard the newest revelation? I don't know if you call it a revelation about how they did that. They found some new, I don't know if they found new, they just maybe looked at it differently. They found some kind of hieroglyph on the wall there. It looked like they were using some kind of slick on the sand so they could drag the brick across it. Basically, like wet sand is almost liquid in a way. So you could just using, I guess, no way. I wouldn't say but if you would consistently pour sand along the pathway, or pour water onto the sand, and you had the brick you're moving on some kind of platform, and then they had a bunch of people pulling it, that the friction is so low that you could move that quite easily. Now that's just a thing they are guessing.
Ah, really? Well, they employ something like that. I've seen that with loading aircraft carriers, where they have they're not using the forklifts. It's all like the ball bearings on the floor, so they're reducing the point of friction.
Sure. Yeah.
I've heard to it because I envision. I remember watching packing jumbo jets and airplanes, and these guys are moving around 10 by 10 by 10 boxes, and they're just swinging them across the floor like nothing. But but the entire floor it's basically ball bearings mounted on the floor, but they're mounted in place and they can spin freely in whatever direction, and each one's independent. So yeah, they can just take and they move these boxes, park them in place, and strap them down.
Yeah. Kind of walk up if you could.
But yeah, that's good there. But yeah, love that. Just
apart from the sound technology, the acoustic frequencies, that's another ancient aliens technology that they talked about.
oh yeah.
I don't think it was an episode before. So they had some kind of machine that could resonate a certain sound frequency that would resonate with that brick, so they can just levitate it. Even though it's
Like the brown
tons, it could. Well, you don't want the brown because that would be pretty. But yes, it's the same. Because sound waves carry. I wouldn't say waves, but they carry a resonance. Because
they resonate.
Because what was that bridge? That famous bridge that would, because I guess the design wasn't done properly. So as the river was flowing underneath this bridge that the cars were driving over, when the wind would come at a certain speed, it would resonate with that bridge, which is a solid piece of concrete, all that. It would swing. Remember that? I think it kind of fell apart. I know it's famous because they have a video of this bridge just doing this because it's moving as the air is passing over the certain. Anyway, so you can use sound as levitation device.
I can see that if you have the right frequency.
And
That's proven because you can shatter, shattering glass and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Obviously it would need some kind of machine.
Right.
But that's the thing. Once, you abandon civilization, per se, like when Egypt happened, like if we were to all, the power went out, we had to become nomadic, how long would all this stuff last, really?
Right.
Our tools would break down, everything would rust.
Everything would eventually, without proper care and everything, things would eventually all break down. No, you're absolutely right. That's why I said, I finished watching, I was watching The Walking Dead. And,
You're talking about near the end of the first season? Where the guy that the CDC, was that where they went to?
Yeah.
Where anyway, continue on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but they're trying to depict how long. You haven't actually seen how long this has been going on, but you could see the wear and tear on buildings already.
Yeah.
Things just left where other houses are actually left sitting pretty decent, depending on, your climates.
They could be a plot device, you can't, because they need a house to live in.
But yeah, trying to find where, but I mean, and then, I don't know, I think they're a little inconsistent with that at times, because then you go look and they're trying to, dig a car out of that's been completely covered in vines and stuff, but the battery still works on it. For that to happen, for that to happen to a vehicle, something to that extent, that would take several years.
Sure.
And without, you don't run a battery for even a year, it's not going to hold a charge.
Right.
Like,
what's the proper maintenance on storage for the car? When you have to run that once a month? Is that what the proper?
I think at least once a month. I mean, I know, because that's why a lot of people, even here in the winters, they store their vehicles and things. I mean, they disconnect the batteries, because if you don't disconnect it, that's still drawing a charge off of it, especially with today's cars with all the electronics in it. I mean, you go back even a few years, I mean, it would, the cars didn't do it so much because everything had to be powered on.
Right.
But it first started drawing juice all the time when your digital clocks came around, because the digital clocks would still have to keep time.
Right.
Well, so that was essentially drawing juice off. Well, now anymore, you got your GPS systems, people have their chargers in to plug phones in and all that type of stuff. And that stuff is all drawing juice, and we are way off the subject at this point.
Yeah, well, that happens here on this podcast. I think it makes it more interesting.
Right. But even
we were on tetrahedrons, right?
Tetrahedrons, your new favorite word.
Yeah, it's a fun word to say. So have you heard about these tetrahedrons?
So yeah, I mean, well, and the fun thing, the other great thing I said, actually, if you just take your time and look about, with sacred geometry and you look at it, you can find it everywhere in your life. Just
once you know what to look
day.
for, you'll be amassed in.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're looking for the perfection in shapes, and a lot of that may not be there. He says, but where you're actually going to find your perfect shapes are definitely, sometimes you're probably going to find more naturally occurring in nature versus man-made.
Right. That is a big difference. A lot of man-made stuff doesn't follow sacred geometry, which is why it's called sacred, because you don't use it for everything. It's sacred.
Right, and and again, kind of goes back to the religious reference of how it came about and all of that. Which is because and there's very fine tunes and machines that can do things like that today with your, lathes and other things. I mean, how many people wear rings on their fingers, which are definitely pretty much a perfect circle, unless it's, a cheap one or something you can bend it, whatever.
Precious metals are really
right. But I mean, even your diamonds. Diamonds, they don't form. Actually, that's actually a great one to reference as far as this is go, because the way diamonds are formed, to get their shape, they don't actually grind material away. They're technically at the molecular level just taking off slices and pieces. That's why when they make these diamonds and get them there, it's such a fine art to doing it. To get them to do that because they are perfectly formed already. It's just, you'll see a raw chunk of a diamond, and basically No, it doesn't look like much at all. It's these jewelers that actually are able to just take these layers off. I mean, they'll, kind of take their edges off and they'll polish it, but they're really not like grinding diamond dust away or anything like that to make these shapes. The shape is already there. They're actually just bringing it out. It's an art.
And whether or not they're worth as much as they are, based on market share.
That's another story. It's how everybody puts theirs. I'd still love to.
De Beers debacle.
Yeah, love to go get some coal and just go, put it into a pressure thing for a few years. I don't know how I would do it, but
especially those artificial diamond guys, we gotta be really secret. Otherwise, without them, wait, show you where they're located because they're afraid of De Beers coming out and destroying everything.
Right. It's all these man-made jewels and artificial jewels.
Because we can make them perfect.
Yeah.
Artificially. Which is a problem for diamonds.
Yeah, they don't like that so much. So but now you're just getting into the
here's the
real
thing.
versus.
Would your to-be wife, if you told her that this is not a real diamond, this is artificial, it looks and feels exactly the same weights, same shapes and color, but it didn't come out of the ground. Some girls don't like that.
Right. Well, that's what cubic zirconia is.
Yeah. I was trying to remember the word, but
yeah, cubic zirconia. Unless you were to go have it appraised and had somebody look at it, well, you might would never know. But that's the funny thing, though. They're actually making other man-made jewels. They're doing emeralds and rubies and other things. Yeah, they've actually been out for quite a while. But they're not exactly popular. And doing that, but what they're doing with some of them is they're able to kind of tint the colors in them a little bit more on some of these. So I think it's used more in a lot of like your designer or costume jewelry a little bit more because they can get a lot more versus your natural colors and things. But that's a perfect example of like the geometry coming out. It's already perfectly, it comes out as this, maybe ugly rock.
Yeah.
But the shapes are all there. You're basically just cutting and hitting at the right angle so you can actually just see that good angle formed in your different cuts of diamonds and whatnot. You're ever at the beach looking for picking up shells? There's great examples. If you have snow, you're able to, hard to see in snowflakes or whatever, but unless you actually get a microscope, but the shapes are there.
You could probably do with a magnifying glass too.
Magnifying. Actually, another readily one that I saw, look at a pine cone.
Ooh, yeah, pine cone.
When they, not necessarily after they're open, because then the weather kind of, distorts things a little bit. But before a pine cone actually opens up, you'll see it definitely more in the spring and early summertime before you do that. Look at those. Pine cones are a great example of, just look at the symmetry of it all and the way it's made in nature. Your bees.
Sunflowers.
In mostly any flower, if you look at the center of any flower, look at the shapes and the way that they're formed in there. It's great. Actually, you want to see another great one? Have you ever thrown a rock into a still pool of water?
Yes, the ripples.
Watch the ripples come out. They're all perfectly, each ripple is the exact same distance apart. Unless affected upon by, some other force or whatever, wind or perhaps.
Thanks for the physics 101.
What? That's what I'm here for. This is what I do.
This is what we do here.
This is what we do.
Dropping knowledge bombs.
Drop in there. So, something, a great little thing. Look into it. I'd love to look into it more on myself, just, see whatever things are out there, and love to find out more about the origins. I'm still thinking ancient Egypt might be a great topic sometime, but where do we go? I mean,
We could probably do hours on that though.
we could do hours. Well, which would be great. We might, that could be. Yeah, that could be fun. Looking there.
So we should probably mention Fibonacci before we, he is that's his name, right? Pretty sure, the scientist, Fibonacci, or
Nachi or Nachi?
naturalist. I always thought it was Fibonacci.
I always thought it was Fibonacci.
Who says Fibonacci? Nobody says Fibonacci.
The Fibonacci sequence.
Who'd you go to school?
Fibonacci. I don't know. I'm just asking. Is it Nachi?
Pretty sure it's Nachi.
Okay, I think you're right, but I don't know. I'm arguing with myself.
Well, here, I think I have it spelled out here somewhere.
Yeah, the grammatical definition.
Well, it is CCI, FIBONACCI.
Yeah.
Okay, so technically to be either, according to the English language.
Yeah.
But then again, I think it's an Italian word or name.
You don't say macaroni.
Yeah. True. But I was always told Fibonacci.
You're probably right.
Anyway, that guy, he kind of, I'm sure he wasn't the first to notice, obviously, but he kind of popularized it or gave it a name per se.
Mm-hmm. Would you care? You'd probably be better. Explain the Fibonacci sequence. Nachi sequence.
Fibonacci. Well, sure.
I don't remember exactly. It's the series of numbers. It's not the prime numbers. Since you wanted to mention it, you explain.
Well, I figure we should at least mention it. I don't.
And you don't have it in your notes.
I don't think I have it in
Yeah, dropping knowledge. Great knowledge you have.
Yeah.
You wanted
You
to
see,
mention it.
Well, I know because Judy wants to know. Because she mentioned it to me, Fibonacci. I have to mention the podcast.
Shout out to Judy.
Judy, this one's for you. Fibonacci. Okay, so it's, I would say the term used for this application, whenever you see it. Like the Nautilus shell or the sunflower.
Right. It's a specific series of numbers. I know.
And there's a mathematical equation to it.
The equation to it. I know it's definitely used in code breaking. A little bit. It's kind of the basis what they would go off of things on. So it definitely relates to this.
There's something called phi, PHI, not pi, but phi. Is that the Fibonacci sequence? Not quite sure.
No, I don't think pi has anything to do with
Well,
it.
phi, PHI.
Oh, phi. Yeah, phi, not pi. Sorry.
Like I mean, I've never seen it mentioned. But you see,
there may have to be an addendum posted here.
Yeah, we try to do research, but we never usually get around to a lot of it.
Not too much of it. So we're there. This is a fun little topic to talk about, though. I like this. Hopefully, they should be coming posted.
We kind of mentioned Dan Brown. We kind of reversed it on that about with the Masonic symbols and.
Oh yeah, the Masons and the Freemasons and everything. Yes, that's.
They used a lot of this in their.
They considered the sacred geometry, and what they reverted back to, which actually I know was specifically mentioned by Dan in one of Dan Brown's novels. He referred to the sacred feminine.
Da Vinci Code, right?
I believe that was the Da Vinci Code.
Like the most popular book of all time.
Right. Yeah. Which he referred to, and it was a triangle.
Oh, yes.
Because they referred to what they refer, if I remember correctly, the reference was to, they referred it to the woman, and what they referred to the sacred feminine referred to the woman, and so you would look for the triangles, especially in the famous Last Supper picture, where the triangles are formed, because a triangle essentially, they referred to it as almost being like a cup. And so when the woman would be pregnant, her cup is full because she is now making life.
Sure.
So that was a reference to the sacred feminine. So I mean, Leonardo da Vinci himself had, I mean, Da Vinci's David, the Perfect Man.
Yeah. What thing is that called? I don't might have that
His Perfect Man. It's the. I'm sure you've probably seen it. It looks like it has the man, and it looks like he's got 4 arms and 4 legs.
down. Or all
But
his points touch.
But the points touch there, and there he's actually referring to a very big deal with symmetry there as well.
No, I don't think that's in here.
But Da Vinci was a big fan. I mean, you'll find references to this, and he looked into this, and it was a big part of all of his work as well. Da Vinci was into this very much, of this sacred geometry, and including it in all of his works, and some of it.
But it's hard to spot unless you're really looking for it.
You have to look for it, or almost have somebody point it out for you.
Then it becomes obvious almost too.
Yeah, and then kind of once you see where he did it in a couple of words, then it's like, okay, now you can see it here, you can see it there, you can see it there, and yeah, it's actually quite. I mean, if you look into any of like the Masons and the Freemasons and stuff, that symbology is there as well. So, but yeah, this was a great topic. I think our schedules have finally aligned just a little bit better.
Yeah.
We should be
Now
able
that
to
he's
do
back on
this.
Dave's side.
Yeah, I'm not quite the zombie anymore.
Yeah.
And
You can actually form a sentence.
and yeah, we should be able to do this and have some other great and more fun topics coming your way.
Yeah, like Egypt, and we gotta finish up Area 51 too, part 2, because we did part 1 of Area 51, but being that we took so long between episodes here, Judy was kind of jumping in a bit because she gave me this idea, so
We ran with it.
and she's one of our staunchest fans.
Soon to be coming, hopefully though, we're going to have, you will be seeing a very special episode of the SciCast. What will be on it? We don't even know. But
That's what you gotta watch.
You're going to see some great and fun stuff though, I guarantee.
All right, so
Until next time,
Yeah.
I'm Ben.
Dr. J, and you've been watching the SciCast. Thanks.
Have a great day. Stay classy.
Stay classy.